Hello, in this video we're going to continue with an MVP of this to-do list app, and to do that we'll need to address some of the accessibility issues that exist currently. So right now we can add to-dos and we can delete to-dos and we can edit the text in the to-dos, and there's a lot of good accessibility going on here. We can reload the page and everything sticks around. We have good features, we have decent accessibility, but there are certain things that just aren't great about the experience here. Specifically, if you try to use a screen reader with this, you're going to have some issues, and just visually you can see that there are a lot of problems with how things look. It can be hard for people who don't have fine motor control to click buttons that are very close together, for example. So CSS can help with a bunch of that, and then some different other HTML and CSS tools can help improve the accessibility experience. So first of all, let's just check out what happens when we try to use our app using the keyboard and a screen reader. So I'm going to open up Windows Narrator by clicking into the browser, and then I'm going to hit Control Windows Enter.
Scan. Narrator window heading level 1. Welcome to To Do app Google Chrome window. To do app document. Edit. Scan off. Sound output. Slider. 15%. 13. Scan off. To do app Google Chrome window. To do app document. Edit. Required.
So I can navigate through using
Add
my arrow
button.
keys.
Scan.
And using the tab key and the space bar and the number keys as a user of a screen reader would. So I'm just going to use the down arrow keys and the up arrow keys.
Button. Clear all to-do items. Heading level 2. To-do list at level 2. Bullet. Fast delete edit. 1 of 3. Bullet. Delete. Button. Bullet. Edit. Bullet. SDF delete edit. 2 of 3 level 1.
So you see SDF delete edit. We get kind of everything read out from the item as we go through, and we have
Bullet. 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 Fast delete edit. 3 of 3 level 1. Bullet.
And
delete. Button.
when we activate that button,
To do app.
we just get to do app, the name of the title up here getting read out. So if that was Vite plus React, that would be pretty horrible experience.
Enter list. 2 of 3 level 1. Mainland. Scan. Add. Button. Edit. Required. Scan off. Something. Please match the requested format. W. S. New line. Please fill out this field. Comma. O. P. Something. Please match the requested format.
So we also have probably a bug in our regular expression where we can't end in spaces. We probably wanted it to just be if everything wasn't a space.
Space.
We also don't know.
Something. Please match the requested format.
When we get that input, that validation error, we don't know what the requested format is. There's nothing that tells us that. So how would we be able to fix this without better instructions? When we also add that,
Add. Button. Please match the requested format. Scan. Add.
nothing is announced to us in terms of the page content changing. So something got added down here.
To do app. Edit selected.
You can clearly see that if you can see it, but if you can't see it, you wouldn't know that anything changed. Same happens when you clear.
Clear all to do items. Button.
Nothing is told to you about what happened. So there are different solutions to this. We can use ARIA live regions to have announcements occur when content changes. Sometimes this can cause issues when we're using React because of the way that the content is changed on the page. But one thing that we can do, since we have simple changes here, is we can just have a status area where we can have a status message that can be read out to someone when they make a change. So I'm going to turn off the screen reader
Exiting narrator.
using Control Windows Enter, and then we can create an area where we can start to put those messages for the screen reader users and for other users as well. So above the form, I'm just going to create a P element, a paragraph element, and I'm going to give this the role of status. And so that's automatically going to make an ARIA live polite region. So that would be like ARIA live equals polite, and it adds a couple other attributes on there as well. But it just says this is going to be an area where I put status updates. And so in here, when I change that content, I can for beginning, I could say like no recorded updates or something like that. But this won't get announced no matter what. The users can look through this with their screen reader or navigate through this, but they will also get announced changes when things change. Sometimes though we'll have issues with where the focus of the page goes, whether the screen reader is going to announce things, so we may need to be able to manually focus that element. And so in React we want to be able to get that rather than with document.select query selector or get element by ID. We would rather use a React ref. So ref is like a reference to the element, and we'll give it a name like status p element, and then we can create that ref using React create ref or React use ref. So you can say const status pl equals use ref, and typically you pass in null there. And so to use ref, we'll need to import it from React, and now we can access using ref.current status pl.current. We can get the HTML element for this p elsewhere in our code. So what we might want to do, for example, is when we clear all to-do items, we might want an announcement that occurred. So let's go to the clear to-dos function and wrap it in curly braces so we can do additional things here. And rather than, maybe that's actually fine, but inside of this, instead of just setting to-dos here, we probably want to set to-dos, and then after to-dos change, we would want the message that changed to come through. Or for example, we could change this. So this is essentially saying set to-dos equals, what's here right now is saying then take whatever the result of this previous thing was and say, something, and then call set to-dos with that something. That's all that shorter syntax said. So we can easily create more actions to happen in here. So for example, when that data comes back, we can say that it might be a good practice to check in here if this task was successful, so we don't necessarily know that if we cleared, that things were cleared successfully. So the something that comes through here would be the all to-dos. So probably it would be something like if the all to-dos is in fact 0 length, that means that there was a successful clear, so clear success, and we probably want to set the text content, but we can do that also with a React state. So rather than having to use the ref, we can use the ref simply for focusing. And the thing about focus, so focus is like when you're clicked into an input, you're focused on that input, or when you click on a button, you're focused on that button. But only interactive elements actually have focus by default. And interactive elements also are the only things in the tab index, or the tab order. Like you can only tab through interactive items, not just content like paragraphs and stuff. So if you want to be able to focus on a paragraph, you need to give it a tab index, but you don't necessarily want it to be in the tab order. So the trick for that is to give your item a tab index, but that tab index is going to be -1, which says make this focusable, but don't put it actually in the tab order like it's a button or an input. And so that way we can call status pl.current.focus, and we can focus that particular area if we need to. So in our clear success, let's just first try to set the content of the this no records update to be based on state. So let's say we have const update set update, or status set status. Use state of the default should be no record recorded updates or something like that. And then in the status, we'll go right here. And then we can call set status to say all to-do items cleared, sure, but we also probably want to give some sort of time for that. So const date time is this, and set status all to-do items cleared at date time. So now if you clear the items, you see that all to-do items cleared, or cleared to-do items, and then you get that update. So let's see if a screen reader notices this change.
Scan. Narrator window heading level 1. To-do app Google Chrome window. To-do app document. Clear all to-do items. Button. Clear to-do items at February 20th, 2025, 2:07 and 18 seconds p.m. Clear to-do items at February 20th, 2025, 2:07 and 25 seconds p.m. Clear to-do items at February 20th, 2025, 2:07 and 29 seconds p.m. Exiting narrator.
So the only challenge there is if the exact seconds are the same, you might not get that change announced. So that could be something that you would want to improve upon. But basically, we're seeing that that clear is getting successfully announced. So at least they know that something is happening there, and we don't have to explicitly focus them in this case. So what about adding? We might also want to do that same thing when we add. And since we're doing the same sort of thing over and over, it might be reasonable to create a function for this, even though it's pretty small. We say like function say update status, and we'll say action So it's just going to put the action at date time. And so we can just call that here. And there you go. So now for add, we can reuse that function. That would be in the handle submit. Again, we would probably want this one would be a little more complex to see if it succeeded. So we're going to need to set to-dos to be new to-dos. But how would we determine whether this new to-do was put in there? Basically want to see if const found equals new to-dos dot find to-do. Can we find a to-do with the ID and let's say and the text is the same as well? And then if that is found successfully, meaning we added it as we desired, then we can update the status to add to-do text. This could get really long if the text is really large, so we could just say added a to-do item, added a to-do, and if we click add, added a to-do, added a to-do, etc. So let's see how our screen reader handles this.
Scan. To-do app Google Chrome window. To-do app document. Add button. Added a to-do at February 20th, 2025, 2:10 and 17 seconds p.m. Added a to-do at February 20th, 2025, 2:10 and 23 seconds p.m. Scan off. To-do app Google. Scan off. Please fill out this field. D. Scan. Add button. Added a to-do at February 20th, 2025, 2:10 and 31 seconds p.m. Added a to-do at February 20th, 2025, 2:10 and 36 seconds p.m. Clear all to-do items button. Clear to-do items at February 20th, 2025, 2:10 and 40 seconds p.m. Exiting narrator.
So that worked pretty well. If the time had been the same, we might not get another announcement, and we can see this is pretty cumbersome to read, so potentially this could be shortened for the screen reader to be better. but that works all right. Now, what about deleting an individual item? We can go to the remover and once again just pass a function here where we're going to take the new to-dos and check on something. So in this case, what we want to do is see if that was successfully removed. So if we can find this, in this case we want it to be found, in this case we want it to not be found. So it would be, the text could be the same, but as long as we can't find something where the ID is this and the text is that, as long as we don't find that, then we successfully removed it. So we can say removed a to-do, sure. So let's see, delete, removed a to-do, removed a to-do, removed a to-do. So that seems to be working. Let's see how our screen reader handles it.
Scan. To-do app Google Chrome. To-do app. Remove day to do at February 20th, 2025, 2:12 and 1 second p.m. To-do app. Remove day to do at February 20th, 2025, 2:12 and 5 seconds p.m. To-do app. Remove day to do at February 20th, 2025, 2:12 and 10 seconds p.m. Edit. Scan off. Add a day to do at February 20th, 2025, 2:12 and 15 seconds p.m. Scan. To-do app. Remove day to do at February 20th, 2025, 2:12 and 19 seconds p.m. Clear all to-do items. Button. Clear to-do items at February 20th, 2025, 2:12 and 23 seconds p.m.
So in that case, we didn't have any problems with
Status.
to focus the status. If we did, we could do it on a case-by-case basis to essentially
Exiting narrator.
the status. We do want to be mindful though that that could be cumbersome for users as well, because if you think about the case where you're adding from this form, we're not clearing out the form, so maybe we want to create a bunch of to-do items and then just easily make edits and keep adding new to-dos. If we get unfocused from this particular input, that could be pretty cumbersome. So I'll just show you that by adding it across the board every time we update a status. If we say, okay, go ahead and set this status and then set the focus by focusing that ref. So that's going to automatically put the focus into that that thing with the tab index -1, and you'll see when you add a new to-do, we get focused up here. You can see that better if we're
Scan off. To-do app Google Chrome window. Status. Scan. Add a day to do at February 20. Item has no primary action.
So now you see I can't just hit enter and add another to-do like I could before because I'm actually on that status item. So you may need to move the focus on a case-by-case basis to get that status to read out correctly based on what the default behavior is. But you want to use that sparingly because you can potentially disrupt the better experience.
Main
which would be when I
to do app Google Chrome window. Add a day to do it. Add a day to do it. Add a day to do it February 20th, 2025, 2:13 and 59 seconds p.m.
When I just don't change the focus, I can easily keep my focus in this input box and just keep adding to-dos, which is really convenient.
Clear all to-do items. Button. Scan. Clear to-do items at February 20th, 2025, 2:14 and 10 seconds p.m. Add. Button. Add a day to do at February 20th, 2025, 2:14 and 15 seconds p.m. To-do app.
So there you can also see an accessibility issue where I hit edit. If I had been using my keyboard for this, I would probably want my focus to be put inside of here, actually. So that's something that could be improved.
Exiting narrator.
If we click update and we click edit, we want to be automatically focused into this input here. So let's see how we can do that. We know we're going to need a ref for the updater. So we have a single text input form. So if we pass through an, for example, an input ref, and its default is null, then we could put the ref right here. Ref equals input ref. Make sure we don't have any errors here. And we're going to need that input ref to be focused when we click the edit button. So in addition to setting editing to true, we're going to want to do something else. So I'll just pull this out and say on edit, click. going to set editing to true, but we're also going to have a ref called, say, update input ref .current .focus, and then we need to create this input ref and pass it in to the input form. So we'll pass it in, and then we'll also create it up here. Now when we click edit, cannot read properties of null focus. Yeah, and I think it's because we're conditionally rendering this. We don't necessarily have it, so we might need to have it set up here, not as a return value like this, but we might need to set it up as a variable like const edit form to pre-render it as JSX. I'll use lowercase so we know it's not a component, but it is a JSX variable. And if we're editing, we'll return the edit form, but we're still going to render it either way. So does that help us? Still not happy with that. So we might need to try another method here. Where we, on edit click, we'll have a function called focus or something like that. Unless the prop didn't get passed through correctly. Oh, because no, maybe not. This is a good idea from Copilot. So it's saying to just use a use effect to switch the focus when editing state changes. So we'll say if the input ref.current is not null and we're editing, then focus. So whenever we've switched into this, then we can focus that. And it's listening for changes in editing. And then we don't need to focus here. We can simply just wait for the edit to be focused, the input to be focused when that transition happens. So whenever editing flips over, if it's true, meaning we are in edit mode, and that ref is initialized, then we're going to focus into that input. So now that's a better experience. We can test that.
Scan. To do app Google. Bullet. Edit. Button. Ask Haskell. Edit. Ask Haskell. Required. Scan off. A. C. D. E. F. G. Scan. To do app. Bullet. Delete. To do app. Remove date to do it February 20th, 2025. Edit. Scan. Add. Clear all to do. View site information. Add. Scan. Select an select main dev bookmarks prompt 8 dev tools bookmarks toolbar dev tool toggle more text cut clear create live to do app. Edit. Scan. Add. Edit. Required. Please fill out this field. Scan off. Please match the requested format. PM.
So please match the requested format is another issue that we're having because the requested format, for one thing, the regular expression could be improved. So
main.jsx to do visuals. Inspect this in the accessible view with Alt+. Exiting narrator.
So the regular expression might be fine, but it's not allowing spaces on the outside. So let's say allow white space around, but not exclusively white space. So I think that's closer to what I wanted. So now we can do like space A, space D space and add it, but it's adding that with the space. So we also probably want something to, when we pull out our form inputs, to just trim the white space off the outsides. So anywhere we have .get and then some sort of thing from our form data, anywhere we have form data like this, which is in two places, then at the end of that we're just going to want .trim to trim off any white space. And so now if we have a bunch of spaces trailing, those won't get added, but they're still allowed to be there. But if we have all white spaces, we need to match the requested format. So now we can go and fix that error message to something better. So on our input inside of our input form, we can add a custom validator here. So we'll say function custom validator, and input, const input is going to be the event.target in each case. So we're going to put this on both on invalid event and on the on input event, so that we can both detect when we have an invalid input, but we can also correct that if the input is then adjusted to correct the issue in the validation. And so I'm fine with the requirement thing, please fill out this field, I'm fine with that, but I don't really love please match the requested format because they don't know what the requested format is, even users who can see this message. So we can go ahead and say in the default case, we'll just set custom validity, which is the validity message, to an empty string, which will say let the kind of default behavior take over here. So if we try to add something, it'll just say please match the requested format. But then if input.validity.valid is not true, so if this is not valid and the issue at hand is validity dot not value missing but pattern mismatch, then that's the case where we're not matching our pattern. We say please entry must be not all white spaces. So then we get the default issue is going to be please fill out this field for that, but then we get entry must be not all white spaces. And so if they try to submit like that, it'll be a problem. But as soon as they give some text, we'll trim it up and add it on. And we're going to have that same validation because it's a React component for the editing or the updating as well. So we can't have all white spaces, we can't have empty, but we can have something surrounded by white spaces, and we'll trim those off. So that's a much more helpful accessibility feature, because if you're in the screen reader,
scan, narrator, to do app, scan off, space, please fill out this field. Entry must be not all witty spaces, space, PM, space. Main.jsx to do, scan, console cleared, scan off, space, updates, entry must be not all white spaces, space, please fill out this field. Chrome, button, collapse, scan, back, scan off, entry must be not all white spaces, space, updates, space, space, please fill out this field. F. Added A to do it February 20th, 2025, 2:28 and 26, exiting narrator.
So you can see now they get a much more informative error message about what's happening when they try to submit that and there's an issue with the input. Finally, we should probably touch up some of the CSS just from an accessibility perspective. So at 100% zoom, things are pretty small. We could probably do to have things be bigger. We also might have a couple color contrast issues here. So in the console, I'm going to do a Control-Shift-P and say CSS overview and capture overview. And then I'm going to look at the colors, and there's one contrast issue identified, which is on a lot of our buttons here, and it has to do with this gray text with the white background. So that may be some CSS we removed, or it may just be the default that is a problem, and so it's not meeting AAA contrast. It is meeting AA, but we prefer to meet AAA standards. So let's go and say in the preferring the light color scheme, we can also simulate that. If we go into elements, styles, and we pick here prefers color scheme light, I can pretend that I prefer light color scheme, which I do not, and check the accessibility for that as well. And so you can see there's this bluish text maybe. Maybe I would just prefer this to be kind of the standard black. So that's not going to work, but color black could be fine for the text color. Something got messed up there. Let's go back to automatic, which is dark mode. I can also change this in the browser settings or the system settings, but let's open up Control-Shift-P CSS overview, and colors. This was our problem. So right now we're in dark mode, and in dark mode the buttons are going to need to be color, let's try color white or color black. So that's contrast is probably even worse. Yep, that's even worse. So we could potentially go back to white and make our gray darker. And we might be able to get help in here with the contrast ratio. Sometimes you can look at a color picker and actually see how those colors could be improved. For example, if we go to this button, and I don't think I'm able to see the contrast issues here. But in the CSS overview, I can see it's definitely not good yet, and it's visually pretty obvious that it's not good either. So let's make this a darker gray. And then let's make a border one pixel solid, default color, border radius. Just for looking a little better, we'll do like 0.25 rem and give a padding of 0.125 rem or 25, or padding top and bottom can be 2.5 and left right can be 0.5 rem. And let's make the font weight bold or strong, maybe. See what are our options here. Bolder. I think 400 is the default, so let's go to like 600, 500. That seems fine. Not really super obvious when it gets clicked. So now they kind of shrink a little bit when they get clicked. At least that's slightly helpful. And we could do maybe on hover they get bigger. So grow and then so yeah, it'll hover. On hover, it'll grow, and then on click, it'll shrink. And button active, and also shrink on click, and hover click, obviously. I'm not sure how exactly you would be able to hover without clicking. Let's make it 90 and 110. So at least there's some kind of visual cue that things are changing. But we need to give a little bit of a margin as well, of like half a rem or something, or maybe more, like half a rem, quarter of a rem, and then 0.75 rem on the left and right. So could be a little jarring if there's someone doesn't like motion of like that. So there's probably better ways to handle this. We maybe make the border color to be like something just a little different. So on hover, something changes. And then when we actually click it, now granted this might not be visible to everyone if they, first of all, if they can't see it or if they can't see the colors, but it's at least a cue to some users that something is changing here when we activate the button. And then we don't have that issue of motion, which could be an accessibility concern. Something, oh, I guess it's taking up more space because of that increased thickness of the border. We wouldn't want to change these to divs or anything because that would also impact the accessibility of these buttons. So these are still going to be in the tab index as buttons, but we might be losing some focus styles, which is also a concern. So we still do need some way to signify the focus state, which is typically done with a border and outline. So we want to make sure there's some kind of visual cue. Maybe that's not the best, but at least it's some kind of visual cue that the button is, focus is changing now that we're changing the style of the button. It would also probably be good if we could group together the content in here to be together for this here. So we could create a section. I guess it could be an article because it could technically stand on its own. And we can say ID is to-do list title, and this should be ARIA labeled by the to-do list title. So then that is signified if you were to navigate through this with your screen reader.
Scan, quick start, bullet, to do app Google Chrome window, bullet, edit, button, bullet, bullet, edit, button, to do app, edit, scan, add, button, clear all to do items, button.
You can also see a bit of a conflict with the screen reader coming over top of our styles.
Bullet, to-do list article, delete, button. Clear all to-do items, button, bullet, to-do list article, delete, button, bullet, edit, button, bullet, delete, button, bullet, bullet, delete, clear all to-do heading level 2, to-do list at level 2. Bullet, odd as fast delete edit, bullet, heading level 2, clear all to-do items, heading level 2, to bullet, odd, bullet, clear all to add, edit, scan off, added edit, odd as fast, scan off, scan, heading level 2, to-do list at level 2. Bullet, odd as fast delete edit, one of, bullet, delete, button.
We may
Main.jsx to do. ID
not
equals to-do list.
need
Inspect
the
this in the
label
accessible
by.
view. Alt plus F2. S.
That may be the default to have a heading right there inside of it.
To do scan off. N A R. Exiting narrator.
Here there's an H1 inside of there, and then there's no ARIA labeled by. I think that would be for a section. But that kind of groups this like content together. The to-do list items also could probably be articles, but since they're already list items, I think that that's more semantic there. And our button margins might be a little bit excessive. Could also be nice if these items had a little bit of a gap between them, or it would be nice if our inputs maybe were a little bigger. Since it's a text, you could make it a text field rather than an input. I guess that would be a multi-line. Text area is what I'm looking for. I don't know if that'll mess up any of our placeholder stuff, but if we just change this to a text area, get a little more space for it. Yeah, now we can't just hit enter because we might have multiple lines. But we get the advantage of being able to have resizable, and then I think most of what we're seeing here is the same. Yeah, we still see our placeholder and everything, and we still can't have it does let it be empty potentially. Yeah, so let's just keep this as an input. But if we want, we could make the inputs have a little bit more, maybe font size. Or we could have just maybe more padding or more margin. And we could improve this form a little bit by making this stuff a field set with a legend. And then we could clarify that these things kind of go together, and we could better label this input by either wrapping it in a label or giving it an ID. Yeah, I guess we would want this to be the input name, so it's a little more unique. And have this be like to do text or text content. and we can have that label have a display block so that it's on its own line. And that just gives us a bit of better experience. Enter a to-do item, or maybe like add a new and then it's clear what these things are doing, and you can see that in the screen reader as well. So I'm just going to create a little bit, give the form a little bit of margin. Margin block. Little vertical margin there, maybe 2 rem. And that looks a little bit better. So let's see how it works with a screen reader.
Scan. Narrator to-do app Google Chrome window. Add a to-do item group. Text content. Scan off. No record updates. Add a to-do item. Scan. Text content. Text content. Edit. Required. No next. Insertion point before. Scan off. M. Gat. K. Add. Button. Scan. Added a to-do at February 20th, 2025. 2:48 and 7 seconds p.m. Clear all to-do items. Bullet. Delete. Button. Bullet. Bullet. To-do app. Removed a to-do at February 20th, 2025. 2:48 and 14 seconds p.m. Bullet. Bullet. Edit. To button. Bullet. 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 Get milk delete edit. 5 of 5 level 1.
So there are probably more improvements we can make here, like when you delete, or you could move the focus to the most appropriate place for the focus to be. But overall, this is much more accessible.
Drop, drag, complete. Exiting narrator.
As compared to before, we could have potentially done better with just some default button styles, but we were able to address the contrast issue with this. Probably some more work could go into making sure that all the different states of this button are behaving well with outlines for focus and stuff like that. But we can at least see in the console, if we do Control-Shift-P, that the CS overview, the colors seem to be fine. However, if we switch to the light mode, we might have a different problem. So if we have light mode on, so we need to change that in elements, light, and we have a big contrast issue now with our buttons in light mode. So we want to fix that to probably have just maybe black text and then on our buttons we're at least able to see the button text. It's not really ideal, but it's a little bit better. Maybe we just want to swap our gray for our black. That may have been what there was there before as well. And now we can check Control-Shift-P CSS overview and rerun the overview, check the colors. There seem not to be any issues with the contrast here anymore, which is good. The last thing I might want to do is improve the font size. So in the CSS, we can make the default size a little bit larger. the base size. And also improve our button size a little bit. And finally, we should check that we can zoom in and out. Zoom should not be something that does nothing. It should do exactly what's happening now, where things get larger and smaller. You can have problems if you set things based on CSS percentages or different things like that. And it's going to prevent people from zooming to make things bigger, which is a good accessibility feature for your app. So this is much improved. I think the only other things that could be improved in terms of the accessibility of the page that I'm seeing right now are to make sure we have a main content and a header and a footer. So we have the main content, which is the to-do app itself, and we're also going to want to have a header and a footer. So we need to wrap in a React fragment since we have side-by-side elements. And say that the heading can go up there, and the footer can say created by Nicholas. And if I look at that, it is pretty big, but I want to try to align the content so that might be text align center, and I'll also make the font size smaller. And then I can also add a logo. So I'll just create a quick SVG logo and get rid of these React and Vite defaults. So I created one like this. It's easy to create that in Figma. Do this, make the dimensions the same, lock the aspect ratio, make it whatever size you like, drag in the corners a little, change the color. Use the pen tool to make like a check mark for this to-do list app. Hit escape, enter, drag up the size, center these together, and I want this a little higher. Shift click, Control G to group them, export as an SVG. I'll put that in code, web, to do, public, as to do. Then I can delete Vite and React and go to my index, change the Vite to do.svg and get my favorites icon there. And I can also make that a logo up here. So I'll make my header, well, first I'll put in image so source equals slash todo.svg. I think an image is appropriate here. We'll do alt text of black check mark on green, and give the image an ID of logo pound logo. It's going to have height 1 rem, maybe 3 or 2.5, and then I'll have the header be a flex row, so display flex. And we'll need to take the H1 margin down to 0, top and bottom, and left and right can be 1 rem. And then finally we should align content center, or align items center there, to drop those into the same line. And we could allow wrapping, but I don't necessarily want to allow wrapping. So there's a nice header, nice footer, and the to-do list. And I'm relatively happy with that. More improvements could be made aesthetically, but in terms of accessibility, it's pretty good. Last thing I want to do is give the body a margin 0 and a min height of 100 VH, and make it a display flex direction column, and we'll make the form flex grow 1. I thought that would make it grow down, but I think it's nested inside of a main as well. So maybe we need main to flex grow 1. And there we go. We push the footer down to the bottom, so we're going to need a little bit of padding of 1 rem on that to make that look better. And we should probably have main have a little bit of padding inline of 0.5 rem. Or we could have the entire body have that padding, to be honest. And that looks pretty good for now. So that'll wrap it up for this one.